Kakadosh, Boker Or, Shavua Tov, Masechet Zevachim, Daf Ayin Amud Aleph, Daf Yomi. We are talking about 78.1. We're talking about in the Gemara. Hai Namu Nami Tepukule. We could also take out that Chalav of a Nevelat Behemat Tmea is going to be Mitameh. We're learning it from Chelev Nevela. Mishi Isuro Mishum Bal Tochal Chelev Nevela. The Isur, which is going to be that you're not allowed to eat the Chelev of a Nevela. Right? Remember, Chelev obviously is the prohibited fats that you're not allowed to eat even in a kosher animal. Here we're talking about the Chelev of a Nevela. Right, Yatzah Zo, that's coming to exclude this case. She'en isura mishum bal tochal chelev nevela. That there's no isura of bal tochal chelev nevela. Ela mishum tameh, but because it's going to be tameh, which means since the mekor of chalav nevela tahor is only from this pasuk, so we're talking about only nevela be'emat tehora. So therefore, we don't have the mekor of chalav of a chelev of nevelat be'emat mea. It's going to be asur. So mela, it's going to be tameh kibsara. So says the Gemara, elahai trefa, but rather we need the trefa mi ba'ele tuye. It comes to include a chaya, right, the wild animal that is going to be tahor. Remember that chelev is only prohibited in domesticated animals, not wild animals, right? We're talking about kosher, obviously, right? Kosher wild animals. Sal kadaita chamina, but I would have thought to say, you with me? No. Sal kadaita, I would have thought to say, mi shechel ba asur ubsara mutar. The chelev is going to be asur. Ubsara is going to be mutar. Yatzazo shechelba b'sara mutar. Kamashmalan comes to teach you. Right? He says Kamashmalan comes to teach you the word terefa. Yeah, fine. So Maishna tmea den chelba chaluk mi b'sara. What's the difference in the tmea that it's not going to be different the chelev and the basar? Chayanami and chelba chaluk mi b'sara. Ve'od, and furthermore, active it's written that you're not going to eat it, which means from the fact of these words we're going to learn that it's the pasuk is being metaher. Chelev is only talking about chelev which is asur ba'achila, not chelev of chaya which is mutar ba'achila. Okay, so ela amar Abaye, but rather Abaye comes and he says terefa legufei tzrich. When it says the word terefa, that's for itself, that you're not allowed to eat the terefa. Okay, now he says Shelo Tomar, that don't say Hoil Tmea Asura Mechayim, that since it's Tmea is going to be Asur Mechayim, so Trefa is also Asura Mechayim. Ma Tmea Chelba Tameh, so to Trefa Chelba Tameh. Just like the Tmea, the Chelev is going to be Tameh, so to the Trefa is going to be Chelev Tameh. Yachiv, so Hainam Baile, we also needed a Shelo Tomar Hoil Ve'of Tameh Asur B'Achila, since the Of Tameh is Asur B'Achila, Utrefa Asura B'Achila, just like the Of Tameh is not going to be Metameh, but so to the Trefa is not going to be Metameh. Ve'od, and another question, Mi'ika Lemeilaf Trefa Mitmea. Can you learn trefa from a tmea? Tmea lo hayta lashat kosher. The tmea never was able to be eaten. The trefa was able to be eaten. Before it became a trefa, you were able to eat it. Right? If you're going to tell me, it's trefa mi beten. It was born a trefa. So he says, Michael, so what are you going to say then? So b'mina mi'ika, but there is the same thing in its species. Meaning you're right. You found me an exception to the rule that there's one animal that was born a trefa and it continues being a trefa. Fine. But every other species of that animal is not usually born a terefa. So therefore, obviously, you have that. Ela Marava, but rather Rava says, the Torah says, Yavo Yisur Nevela v'yachulu Yisur Chelev. The Nevela, the Yisur of Nevela is going to be Chal on the Yisur Nevel. So Yavo, right, on the Yisur of Chelev. So Yavo Yisur Terefa, that's also going to be Chal on the Yisur of Chelev. Utzricha, and we need both cases. Why? The Iyashmi'ina Nevela, if it only taught us the halacha of Nevela, Mishum de Metamya, because then it's going to be Metameh. Aval Terefa, but to do a terefa, I would say no. The yeshmin and terefa, now it's only going to be written terefa. Mishum the yisura mechayim, there's the yisur is mechayim. Aval nevela, but the nevela, I would say no. So tzricha, that's why you need in both cases. Also the nevela and also the terefa, that it's both going to be chal on the chelev. Whether it's the terefa or the nevela, it's going to be chal on chelev. For Rabbi Meir, but according to Shtat Rabbi Meir, remember that Rabbi Meir, right, he said that of terefa that was done shechita is not metameh b'det b'liyah. So therefore, what does he do with the word terefa then? We just said, according to Shtat Rabbi Yehuda, that also nevela and also terefa is halal chelev. So if you have an animal which now became what? Which now became whether it's going to be a terefa nevela. So now the chelev of that the chelev is also, the chelev is the primitive fats, is also going to be asur mishum nevela or mishum terefa. But he says, but according to Rabbi Meir, you don't say that. Because according to Rabbi Meir, it's not metameh beta b'liyah. The second that you did the shchita, that's it. So mibaele, so he needs a lemuta shchita shilifnim. That if you do the shchita, which is going to be on the inside, right, of the azara. But according to Rabbi Yehuda, trefa chlin active. There's another word trefa, right? But Rabbi Meir, and according to Rabbi Meir, one of them is to exclude shchita, which is inside, and one of them is to exclude of tameh. Because we said that of tameh is not going to be, the nevela is not going to be mitameh b'vet b'liyah, so it's mashma that it's something in this as well. That of tameh, there's no trefa by it. Rabbi Yehuda, but according to Rabbi Yehuda, Nivela nafkale. He's learning from Nivela. Okay, Rabbi Meir, and according to Rabbi Meir, what do you do with Nivela then? Because remember, according to Rabbi Yehuda, also the word Nivela and also the word Terefa is going to be Chal on the Chelev. But what about this case now? So he comes and he says, L'shiur achila bekazait. We're talking about the shiur achila in a kazait. Typically mikra kama, and we're going to learn from the first pasuk. Afke rachmana, just like we learned, bilashon achila and lashon achila. Chad l'shiur achila bekazait. One of them is going to teach us the shiur achila and a kazait. V'chad, and one of them l'shiur achila b'chdei achila pras. And it's going to be a achila pras. So salka daitach bina. I would have thought to say hoil v'chidushu, that since it's going to be a chidush, so therefore we're going to know yoter b'chdei achila pras amin l'tameh, that it's going to be mitameh. Kamashmanan comes to teach you that we're going to say it's not going to be mitameh unless you're going to have the shiur of the achila of k'dei achila pras. Okay, fine. Next, we're going to bring the pasuk. Tana Rabbanan, we learned on the Braita. Chelev nevela v'chelev terefa b'chelev behemat teora k'ktuv medaber. When it says chelev nevela and chelev terefa, so there we're talking about chelev of a behemat teora. Okay, ata omer, are you going to tell me b'chelev behemat teora k'ktuv medaber or no behemat, maybe it's a behemat mea? So he says, Amarta, you already said tiher miklal v'shchuta. It's mashma that it's because they did the shchita. So v'tiher miklal chelev, that it's not going to be a problem of chelev. Mashmetaher miklal shchuta v'lo betmea. Right? After tiher miklal chelev b'torah v'lo betmea. So it means it has to be talking about a kosher animal. It cannot be talking about a non-kosher animal. Here, when it's saying temea, it's talking about a non-kosher animal, right? It's behemat temea. Okay? So he says, go the other way around. Tiher miklal nevela. Miklal, right? V'tiher miklal chelev, right? Ma tiher miklal nevela betuma v'lo b'teora, v'keshitiher miklal chelev betuma v'lo b'teora. So Marta, you're going to tell me, Ayin Amubet, you're going to tell me 70b. Yeah? All right? He comes and he says, you're going to tell me, Keshaba b'derech zo b'teora. We're talking about now, teora. Keshaba b'derech zo b'temea, right? Maybe it's also going to be temea. Tamul omar terefa. Mishiesh b'mina terefa. Only that it has a terefa. Meaning like this. When you have a non-kosher animal, is there a terefa by non-kosher animal? No, because it's already temeah. You don't need terefa. Meaning, I don't have to come and start telling you, by the way, you ate non-kosher, it's also terefa. It's already temeah. I don't need to go into terefot. So therefore, when we say the concept of terefa, it has to be talking about the kosher animal. Okay? Because if not, what are you talking about? I'm going to come, hey, you ate a pig. By the way, it's a terefa. Why do you have to get to terefa? Lechatchila, it's already temeah. It's temeah. It's not terefa. It's temeah. That's it. You're right. Nowadays, we call it taref. But it's the wrong usage of expression. When you come and you serve pig, right? What are you going to say? You're serving him terefot or nevelotu terefot. It's not nevelotu terefot. That behemet is tmeah. That's behemet tmeah. The only thing is nowadays we use it as like a borrowed language, but really behemet it's a tmeah. It's behemet tmeah. Huh? As long as we aspire to inspire before we expire. Are you listening? Yeah, what did I just say? We aspire to inspire before we expire. That's why. What do you think I said it? Yeah. We're still going to take out the temeah. That there's no trefa. But I'm not going to take out the chaya. That there is going to be trefa. Like this. Remember that a chaya is a wild animal. Yeah, a wilde chaya. You know what a wilde chaya is? A wild animal, right? 100%. It could be from anywhere. There's certain people that they're also wild animals, right? So what happens is like this, right? So he says like this. He says the chaya, which is a wild animal, the meat and the chelev is permitted. That's why I told you before. Chelev is only prohibited in a domesticated animal, right? Fox is not a kosher animal. A deer is a wild animal, right? A deer, a buffalo, these are wild animals, but they're kosher animals. So those kosher animals, you're allowed to eat their chelev. The chelev is usually a prohibited fat. By them, you're allowed to eat all the fats. You're allowed to eat everything. It's all shuman. Okay? So he comes and he says now like this. He says as follows. Yeah, he says like this. Right? Amarle Rabbi Yaakov, but Abba Rava says Rabbi Yaakov, but Abba to Rava. We're going to ask the following question. Nivla be'emat teora mitameh. Nivla be'emat tameh lo mitameh. So he says what? Nivla be'emat tameh is not going to be mitameh. So Amarle, he says, Kama sabe shavishtaba. How many zikenim they had these questions like this? Seifa talim nivilat of tameh. We're only talking about nivilat of tameh. Right? That's what we're talking about. Nivilat of tameh, that it's not going to be mitameh, but beta bliyah. But not on the bema. Only an off. Okay? That means only by the bird. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan lo tiyeh Rabbi Meir ela betmimin. That's only going to be by a tamim. Aval bebaalei mumin. But what happens if you have a balmum? Right? So he says, lo, it doesn't, it wasn't mitayed. Meaning like this. Rabbi Meir just told you that when you have a nivelat off tameh, it's not going to be mitameh be off, right? It's not going to be mitameh betabliya. He says that's only if it was going to be tamim, an animal which was tamim. But if it's going to be an animal which was with a mum, it's not tawar. Rabbi Elazar savar, even bebaalei mumin, Rabbi Meir said it's going to be tawar. So there's a machloket in Shitat Rabbi Meir when he came and he said that you did the melika and it's not going to be mitameh betabliya. Was that only talking about a bird which is 100% healthy tamim, or even by a baalei mumin? V'itmanami was also stated Rabbi Bevaya Rabbi Lazar mitayer haya Rabbi Meir afilu b'maalei mumin v'afilu b'avazim even with the ducks and all these geese and all these things, right? So by Rabbi Yirmiyah araf ez mau. What happens if a person comes and he was obligated to bring an egla rufa? Now he brought the ez and he brought the goat and he did the rufa. He did it. So what's halacha in such a case now to do with the nevilat tmeah? According to Rabbi Meir, right? Just like by the melika. That's what we're asking. But you're using this bird basically, right? Or you're using an ez, right? So that's the question. So he says, "Avazim tarinolim matamam." What's reasoning? Because they're a type of birds. But the is not an egla. It's an egla. He says lamina degla ninu. It's not an egel. When we come and we say egla rufa, an a goat, is not part of the egel. So it's not part of an egel. It's a different category. So it's a different category. You can't do that. Or dilma, but it's still an animal. So maybe I go by the animals. You're right. It's not an egel, but it's still an animal. So it's all like just like a type of birds, type of animals. So he says, Yativ Radim Kamal Shmaita, Amaleh Abai says, Miklal de Glarufa Teorai. It's mashma that the Glarufa is going to be Taor. Right? That means even though it's not going to be permitting it to eat, it's still going to be Taor. Samalein, Amri Deve Rabbianai, Kapara Kativba Kekochim. There's a kapara, just like Kochim. So therefore he comes and he says, one second, you're going to tell me it's good? So Mati Rav Natan Avu Ad Rav Huna Ban Natan, V'achol Tuchlu Eli Ela Shel Chelev, Az She'asur Ba'achila Mutar Bana'ah, Chelev Shel Shor Aniskal Veglarufa Minayin, which means that we know that you're not allowed to benefit from shor niskal or from a legrarufa. It's a surbana. Those are things which are a surbana. Why? Because once you have to stone the animal because it killed another human being or because of the legrarufa, so you're not allowed to benefit from the animal. So it says here, what about the chelev? So he says, in that case, right, he says, kol chelev. When it comes to use kol chelev, also the chelev is going to be a surbana, right? Even though it's going to be tumat, it's going to be tahor from tumat nevela, right? But it's still going to be a surbana, also the chelev. The isal kadan. If you're going to tell me now a glarufa teorahi that it's tahor, how could it be that it's going to be tahor and the chelev is going to be tameh? How does that make sense? Again, we're not talking about achila because achila you're not allowed to eat. That's for sure. You're not allowed to eat the chelev of a shor. You're not allowed to eat the chelev of a glarufa. But it's mutar bana. You could sell it to a goy. You could do whatever you want with it. So the question is, how could it be here that it's going to be that the meat is going to be tahor, and the chelev is going to be tameh? It doesn't make sense. It's the same animal. So says the Gemara, obviously if you did an agla rufa, we don't need that. If you did shechita. So he says, we're not talking about agla rufa, because agla rufa is a surbana. We're talking about you did shechita. So he says, one second, but if you did shechita, it should be tahor from nevela. That's what you kept on learning. We learned that when you come and you do shechita to an animal, that permits the animal, then now it's not going to be tameh anymore. Right? It's not going to be tameh. So he says, and the only question we had was to do with the beta bliya and the melika. Right, with the melika, that was the question. Yes, what happens if you took an egel and you did shchita to it? So obviously it's not going to do egel rufa. Yeah, it's not going to be like the regular way, and therefore obviously it's not the same halacha, right? So he comes and he says, in such a case, the shechita should have permitted it. So he says, Lotzicha, what are we dealing with? Shemeta, it died. Which means like this. The pasuk is talking about the egla rufa, the chelev is tahor, when it died on its own. And therefore the basar for sure is tameh because of nevela, right? But you didn't do the shechita, you didn't do anything. So now it's not going to be, is it going to be a surbana or not? That's the question. Is it going to be a surbana? You designated the egla rufa, and now it died. So now technically, if it's an egla rufa, it's a surbana. But technically, you didn't do anything yet. You didn't do, so he says, miklal de mechayim asura, so it's mashma when it was still alive, that it's going to be asur. So it says, you're right. In Amrabiana, Gevul Shamati V'Shachachti, I do remember something and I don't remember exactly. Nasvin Chavrai Lemimar, so they want to say, Yeridatan Lachaletani, so the fact that it went down and it became an egla rufa, it already makes it asur. You understand? That means the fact that it became an egla rufa, asur. You didn't actually do the egla rufa. How do you do egla rufa, by the way? Take it to the Hechal. And then what do you do? How do you kill it? But which way? Back on the nape. The nape backwards. Like the melika, but the melika is done with your thing, but it's the same thing. It's the nape, it's on the back. It's the back backwards. Like with the kofitz. You take like a whatever it is, and back. Not the shchita is on the front. Exactly. The normal shchita is from the front. This is going from the back. Yeah.